What was the moment that made you realize you needed a different approach?
The moment was the symptom. Okay, it wasn't the root. We had a horrible culture that I created / tolerated. In the beginning was really hard to get everybody aligned on a culture. And then once we did that, it was easier to get people to buy into the lean tools and doing lean and seeing the ways. And you have problems coming at you like meteorites out of the sky all day long. All you got to do is recognize one, reach up, grab it, solve it through your group. When you are trying to teach someone something, sometimes you just say how it is, and you got to just be direct because you're not helping them to do it any other way. You know, if you're not doing something right, you want to keep doing it wrong for a year, or do you want us to correct it? You can call out anybody as long as you're not doing it vindictively. You got to do it with a spirit of an open heart so that people learn and grow. Talking about leaving things better is not practicing leaving things better. You know, you got to reinforce that all ships in the harbor rise together. We need to improve, because if we don't, we're not going to be here.
Hey there. I started this channel with one goal: to help people grow people. But here's the thing. Growth isn't a solo journey.
The best
leaders, teams,
and businesses
thrive because
they learn
and grow
together.
And that's what we're building here. So if that sounds like something worth being a part of, hit subscribe, because the more of us there are, the more we can invest in learning together. Let's grow together.
Yeah, all right, we might kick off. So thanks everyone for being here. Chapter 1, Candour, of Tom Hughes's Improvement Starts With I. Dave and I, we actually met on a Japan study mission at the end of 2019 with Paul. And from there, we've kept in contact. And Dave, you actually invited me into the Lean Maniacs group at one point with other high-level business leaders from around the world. So at that time, I wasn't contributing very much to the group. And you pulled me up and you said, well, you know, Matt, I don't think you're serious about lean at that point. I experienced Candour for the first time. And, you know, you were willing to say it how it was, you know, that I wasn't contributing. And they're like sort of the first real life example that I had. So I had two options. I could either be angry about it or and take offense, or I could use that as a learning opportunity to reflect and do like a Hansei. And that was where I think I experienced real growth in my own journey. So that's why I think this chapter is really important. And it's interesting that he's put it as chapter 1. So although I was doing
you all was really easy because I already booted out about 50 other people, so I had plenty of practice.
So, you know, and then as I reflected, you know, yeah, I was doing the busy work in the business and I wasn't focusing on what removed the stress point for our people and for myself, and wasn't focusing on developing myself as a leader. I think that gives a really good introduction to, you know, Dave, who you are as a person. And I sort of learned, you know, there's no bullshit from the get-go.
If I could take a minute and tell a story that I was thinking about in preparation of this meeting that goes back to probably 93. And I probably would have said the words a little differently than I did when I was 23 or 24 years old. But I had gotten a job at General Motors engine plant as a design engineer. And at the time, GM had EDS do all their computer systems. And they were, I think Ross Perot owned it at the same time, but then GM ultimately bought EDS. I was really in the CAD, CAM, and all that kind of stuff. And this isn't today. This is 93, where 3D modeling wasn't like, you know, so readily available like it is with SolidWorks. They were using Unit Graphics, which is now NX. You needed Sun workstations to power it, you know, like 100 grand a piece, you know, back in 93, 94. So serious investment. And there was a guy that was in charge of EDS at the plant, real polished, you know, good looking guy. And I'm sure he's a fine guy, but he was fast tracking it on a career path. And this story kind of talks a little bit about Candour and Genji Genbutsu, which for those that don't know what that means, it means go to the Gemba to solve a problem. Don't try to solve it from your pie in the sky office. So I got pulled into this meeting where essentially he was on a path to get rid of all dimensional drawings. And he wanted to be able to interrogate a computer model to get the information that you needed. Pardon my candor here, was the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And, 35 thereabouts years later, 33 years later, it's still the dumbest idea because you just can't replace the information that's on a drawing. Yes, you can use the computer model to CNC program. You can use it to do a lot of things. And I'm a big proponent of all that. But at the end of the day, there's still information that you need that's on a drawing. And not to mention, you need easy access to it. Who wants to open up a model, have the training, manipulate the model around to interrogate a feature? It kind of goes against the principle we practice, having the answer where the question is, right? If you got a computer model, the answer is not there. You got to go digging around to find the answer, the tolerance that you want, and you got to embed it somehow in the model. And it's just dumb. It's not simple, and it's still a dumb idea. And I was not shy about saying how dumb of an idea it was. And it never went anywhere, and I don't think that I'm the reason it didn't, but I was pretty boisterous about the fact that this is stupid. So maybe that was my first dose of candor.
So, Dave, can you tell us where you are in the world, overview of what you do, and what your team looks like?
So, well, I'm in Orchard Park, New York, from a geography standpoint, south of Buffalo, right by the Buffalo Bills Stadium, about a mile away, if anybody watches football. And we're a very small team, 6 people, and we get done what 12 to 18 people get done, and I would let anybody challenge me to that any day, and I'd prove it all day long. I mean, the reality is that we don't spend hours upon hours a day screwing around looking for stuff or doing dumb processes that we used to do. So we're in a pretty good place. Company's a very small boutique business. For those that don't know, we restore exotic car interior trim for Ferrari, Maserati, Lamborghini, and all that kind of stuff. So we do restoration as one part of the business, and then the other part, we're doing a lot of reverse engineering and reproduction parts. And we've got a new product out for the automotive industry called Nut Up. It's a lug bolt, lug nut holster, and that's pretty cool. So we're growing the business that way. And this is I've been in business 28 years, but this division, if you will, is only about 10 years. So I've kind of switched gears 3 times in my near 30 years of business. I'm real happy where we are. We got a great team. Are we perfect? No, we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And sometimes I want to smash my head against the wall when you're trying to teach people stuff and it doesn't seem to get through. But I'll kind of say one negative thing about myself that I have to improve upon as a leader is I need to do a better job of celebrating the wins, because I'm a problem solver. Well, a win isn't a problem. I don't focus on what's not broken. I put all my energy on improving and fixing the things that are broken, and I need to do a better job, and I'm aware of it. I just haven't implemented a better job of it. I need do a better job of celebrating what we've done and the team I've got and where we've come, because I stand around and I look at the place, and for a 6-person company, it's just absolutely it's crazy. I mean, I'll look at a video that I did like 2 months ago, and I'll say, oh my God, this is like totally outdated because we're already doing it better, So we're just moving at light speed, getting stuff done, and it's really cool,
So what was the moment or problem specifically that made you realize you needed a different approach?
I'll tell you the moment, but I just want to talk about, the moment was the symptom, and it wasn't the root. Kind of when I'm going to jump ahead and I'll go back. When I found lean and I kind of got on board with lean and Paul Akers 2-second lean, it was really a joining of 2 things that kind of culminated together, and that's culture and lean. And I don't mean lean culture. I mean just general culture. And, I was in business for 22 years before I had this revelation. And we had a horrible culture that I created slash tolerated. I was very frustrated with the way things were going. I had one particular employee that I tend to blame this on, but it's not his fault. It was my fault. But he was the catalyst that really brought this up to attention for me. So I had a gentleman that worked for me for the second time. He worked for me early on when I started my business for a year or so. He left and he came back. And very, very smart guy, very technical, very capable. You could throw anything at this gentleman, he could figure it out. So he was a star in his abilities. But on the other hand, he didn't have a great character. And he's the type of guy that every time you turn your back, not, I don't want to say he was stabbing it, but he was doing something personal. He was always stealing from the company, not in a monetary way, but stealing time or whatever. He was just a very untrustworthy person. And he constantly pushed the envelope. It's all little stuff, but it's all stuff that erodes the culture. So I'll give you an example. At the time, him and I were the two engineers, so we were working 9 to 5:30 was our normal day, 9 a.m. to 5:30. We get snow in Buffalo. And at 5:10 or so on a snowy day, he just took it upon himself to go out in the parking lot, start his car, brush it off, take 15, 20 minutes to do this on the clock and then come back in. And, he never asked permission. He just did it. But the fault that I, laid out is I didn't correct it immediately. So what do you think happened? And we were 6 or 7 people then. What do you think happens when one person does that and the rest of the team sees it?
Yeah, you're setting a pretty bad example.
Right. So other people are either looking at it going, whoa, wait, why is he allowed to do this? Or, well, he's doing it, I'm going to do it. So pretty soon I got everybody going outside for 20 minutes every time there's a flake in the air. And it was just a whole bunch of little stuff like that. And prior to lean, I tried, honest to God, for a year and a half to alter his behavior. I threw more money at him. I threw more money at him with the statement of, I'm doing this for you, but you got to back down to personal stuff. Well, I don't think I'm doing much. Yeah, you're doing a lot. You got to cut it out. In one ear, out the other, right? There was a lot of that going on, and I tried everything to just get this guy to be focused. And I knew a bit about lean before we got lean, so we were trying to do some stuff, and he just was a total resistant person about everything. And he used to work at our laser, and there might be a particular day where he would need to be there for 4 hours lasering parts. And, I'm in the shop working too or whatever. And every time I would look, he's nowhere near the laser. He's gone constantly. And I confronted him one day, like, why, how come you're never at the laser when you got laser work to do? Oh, well, I needed this tool. Oh, I needed that. And okay, all right, I understand. This is what I want you to do. Put a sheet of paper at the laser. And every single time you have to walk away for anything, I want you to write it down. And we're going to start going after this and attacking this stuff and populating it so you don't have to walk away and you can be focused. Well, he kind of took that a little bit personal as it was a personal attack on him. And I also think he kind of wanted a distraction. So I was going to take away his ability to walk away all the time. I don't think he liked that. I was frustrated, and I started looking for things, and I don't know if I was looking at lean. I might have been because I was probably looking at organization and stuff like that. And of course, like many of us here, I came across some of Paul's videos, and man, I got hooked really fast. I was like so in. I started watching these videos. I couldn't get enough. It was like I was addicted to porn or something. I was just watching video after video, and I was just diving in. I was sold. I was like, and I'm not a religious guy. I'm not an anti-religious guy, but I'm not a person that I don't do much in life based on faith. So I'm a guy that's a scientist. I need a lot of convincing. I don't do a lot of stuff on speculation or whatever. I need the proof. But there was something about it where I was hooked, So we started going down that path. I put a presentation together, and rolled it out on April 1st, and I could go on and on for that, but I don't want to talk your head off here. But yeah, so that's kind of how we got started. And again, I was initially treating the symptom and not the real problem. The problem was our culture sucked.
And so when you got onto lean, what was the number one thing that you found you had to develop or change in yourself as a leader?
Oh, that was easy. You can't have a double standard. You can't require everybody to be on time and then show up late. You have to walk your talk. So, as I told you, I used to come in about 9, and it wasn't 9, sharp. It was 9:00 feel like. I was always a night owl, late person, and I couldn't stand getting up early. And my shop started at 7 at the time. So I think within a couple months of lean, we started lean with me not changing my schedule. And a couple months in, I said, I just said, this is stupid. I said, I can't expect people to get in line and follow a culture if I'm not following it. So I just totally changed my behavior, and I've been getting up at 5:30 regretfully for the last 6 years. But I'm out of the shower around 5. When the alarm goes off at 5:20, oh man, it sucks. But I do it because it's the right thing to do.
What's the biggest lesson you learned in those early months? Everyone struggles with the initial implementation and how to present it to the team. What are some of your biggest learnings that you could share with us from your initial rollout?
I think it comes back to culture again, because, one of my all-time favorite books is The Road Less Stupid, Keith Cunningham. Anybody that hasn't listened to that, you got to do it. It's the best, and it's really a business culture book. It's absolutely incredible. And Paul turned me on to that, and it was very early in Paul and I getting to know each other. I think that book, and then the coaching from Paul about not lean culture, about culture, because he helped me a lot with that, helped guide the path. Because we were doing some of the lean tools, and some people were in, some were just going with the flow, but we still had sloppy culture. You hear a lot of people in our space talk about a lean culture, and you can have a culture where people are doing improvements, but you can still have a piece of shit culture in your company where nobody's respecting things, people aren't on time. It's really hard to change the behavior of people, especially when you tolerated and allowed crap for so long. So my biggest challenge in the beginning was just forming the culture of discipline that, we're not here to talk about the football game yesterday. Yeah, we are. You want to talk about that? You do it on break, not when you're working. Everybody in this world likes to talk, and, we all like to socialize, and that's fine. But we need to understand that when we're working, we got to be focused, and we got to leave the socializing for the break and lunchtime or before work. What's pretty wild, and it's kind of cool and rewarding, is myself and my team, we've proven that when we stop and bullshit, we make mistakes. So there's not a person working for me that wouldn't raise their hand and say, oh yeah, we know we do. So we don't have that problem anymore. Throughout the day, somebody might say a sentence or two. That's it. And people are focused, and the beginning was really hard to get everybody aligned on a culture. And then once we did that, my personal feeling is it was easier to get people to buy into the lean tools and doing lean and seeing the waste and making the improvements. Like, we require one improvement every day. And what I teach is, don't go looking for one. You have problems coming at you like meteorites out of the sky all day long. All you got to do is recognize one, reach up, grab it, solve it. There's your improvement. Don't go on a scavenger hunt. You don't got to do that. Just be observant.
In your team, your culture, you're fairly frank with your team, right? We've seen your videos, we've seen your morning meetings. And how have you developed your people to be frank with each other and you and that sort of thing as well, in a respectful manner?
Well, it's still a work in process. I don't know that they all are. The problem that our world, at least the Western world, has with candor goes to, again, it's a symptom of a deeper problem in my opinion. So this is my view. My view is we've become such a delicate, snowflake, soft society that everybody's feelings are hurt where they shouldn't be. if I walked into work and I had mud on my face, I want people to tell me, right? I would be happy to hear that because I don't really want to walk around the whole day with mud on my face. But we're in a world where you say, hey, Matt, you get a little something here, and then you're embarrassed. And, I shattered your ego for a week. And everybody's like so hypersensitive that it makes candor difficult because everybody's feelings get hurt all the time. And, when you are trying to teach someone something, you can't, sometimes you gotta say how it is, and you gotta just be direct because you're not helping them to do it any other way. I think it was Jack Welch, CEO of GE, talks about this, that he got criticized for kind of categorizing people in the A players 20%, B players 70%, C players 10%, and the main focus was to get the C players out. And he was criticized by some for doing that, but his words were keeping a guy in the company, and I'm paraphrasing, until he's 50 and giving him bullshit performance reviews that he's doing a great job for all these years when he's really a 10% player, a C player. And then all of a sudden management changes and somebody comes in that recognizes that, and they let the guy go at 50. He's got a house and a mortgage and 3 kids in college. And that is far more hurtful than 20 years prior saying, you know what, this isn't for you. Go out and find something that's going to work for you. I subscribe to Jack Welch's view on that is you're not helping somebody, stringing them along if they're not a good fit. I don't know who else said this, but there's a saying, slow to hire, fast to fire. And we do that. When we start talking to a person to hire them, we do trials, we do multiple phone interviews. It could be 4, 6, 8 weeks before we hire somebody to even do a trial, like a 1-week trial. And then if a month or so goes by and we sense some character things and, people start to loosen up and we see bad traits coming out that we know we're not going to be able to correct, we move on, and it's better for them and it's better for us.
Can you tell us what your daily routine looks like as far as 3S, morning meeting, improvement time, that sort of thing? Because I think you've really refined that over time, right?
Yeah, so we've changed it a lot. I think it's kind of important to not let things get stale. And we are currently not doing 3S, and we should, but we do spend 30 minutes a day at a morning meeting. Now, in the last couple of months, there's been weeks where we do it 2 or 3 times a week, and then we go right to work if we're real busy. Being that we're limited on resources, some days we don't do it. But we do stretching and a grateful every morning. But generally speaking, we do a 30-minute meeting. The start of this year, there were some pretty high-power meetings. I spent a lot of time preparing on them. Ryan's done some on Ono's precepts. And for anybody that's done this, you guys probably all have, that preparing a good meeting doesn't fall from the sky delivered by the stork. It takes work. It is tough. And obviously we do rely on guys in the community like yourselves pulling videos, playing videos, watching them, and doing takeaways. And, one of the early things that Paul taught me when we were starting to do lean in the morning meetings, he asked me one day, how's everything going? And I said, I think it's going pretty well, but I kind of look around the room, I get a lot of blank stares, and, I'm not really sure what's going on in their head. And Paul delivered a very candid message to me, as he's good at doing. He said, Dave, ask them. It's got to be a dialogue, not a dissertation. And that was a big changing point for me. Like literally the next day, we were watching a video and I kept stopping and, hey, Brian, what do you think? Bob, what do you think? And we do that, relentlessly now. So we constantly are, we just been going over the video Alex Ramirez did at In the Ditch. It's about a 45-minute long video. I think we're on 4 days and we're not done with it because we're probably only watching 10 minutes a day because we keep stopping and, what do you observe here? And, and I try to really get everybody to engage and think. That works pretty well. So yeah, we're we're doing that. We're doing one improvement a day. And then one other thing that we're doing, we did this once before, we lost track of it, and then we got back to it recently. We all preach this concept about leaving things better. We kept preaching it, and we weren't getting the results to our standards. Now, probably to everyone else's standards, we were amazing. But to our standards, we're very high on that. I got thinking about it, and it's like, well, I got all these guitars hanging on the wall here. If I talked about playing guitar and I never picked one up, would I be any good at it? Probably not. Talking about leaving things better is not practicing leaving things better. So what we implemented, again, that we did this a number of years ago, and we picked it up probably 2 months ago. Every day with our improvement walk, we do a leave it better too. So everybody says what they left better the other day. And what that's doing is it's putting people in a position to be aware. So, and by the way, the leave it better is also not a go find something to leave better. The idea is I want you to observe something that's out of place and leave it better. So it's teaching people to be more observant. And it's working. It's absolutely working. It's been pretty good.
People have to report in a daily improvement, and they've got to report in something that they've left better, and that's kind of like a 3S activity.
Yep, that's right.
All right, I love that. That's really good. All right, well, thanks, Dave, for that. So now we got 4 questions from the group. First question actually is Phil. So Phil's right here. Do you mind, Phil, going ahead with your question?
My question is really around, how do you deal with people where you've got, I'll say, delicate egos? So if you take, say, Matt's story he said earlier, where you pulled him aside and said, hey, Matt, I don't think you're really living up to what we're doing here. That could be taken one or two ways. I think Matt took it the right way and said, hey, I'm open to, receiving this feedback. Whereas I would say a lot of people from my experience would say, oh, probably bugger you. And take offense. And like your message wasn't meant offensively or anything like that. And as you said, the culture that we've had and tolerated in our company for the last 15 years is that, and now we're trying to change that culture. But I'm trying to balance that with people's egos. Not saying that they're egotistical, but everyone has an ego. I have an ego. And I've definitely had like Paul reach out and give me some some candor at times, and I could take that one or two ways. And sometimes it does hurt hearing some of that feedback. But, have you got any advice on what would you do perhaps differently, knowing what you know now?
With the gentleman I talked about, I wouldn't do anything different because there was nothing that was going to change his behavior. And, the book Good to Great, it's a 12-hour book. I can sum it up in one or two sentences. And it's, get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus. I think Tom Hughes says change the people or change the people. And Tom says he doesn't take credit for that, but it's something he says a lot. Just like I always say, it's not my quote, but you get what you tolerate. When we're interviewing now, we are really, really hardcore on that point. We ask people, look, we're going to tell you your shoe's not tied the right way. Are you going to be okay with this? Like every day, we're going to tell you something's not right and you have to improve and change. We tell people straight out, if you don't like change, turn around right now. This is not the place to come. I would say we've had pretty good success with that. There was a guy that worked for us who was let go a couple of months ago. Some of the skeletons were starting to fall out of the closet with him, which is why we ultimately, decided that he'd be better off seeking employment elsewhere. Nobody's left because of it yet, but we've got some people we asked to go. We're big time job up front. And then we're really on that all the time. And we teach, don't get sensitive. If you're not doing something right, do you want to keep doing it wrong for a year, or do you want us to correct you?
Yeah, and I think it's easy, as you say, when you're bringing new people into the organization to say, hey, this is what we expect. When you're taking, say, an existing culture that's been established, say, for 15 years, and, it's hard work going. And I think that's why people, like the change the people or change the people saying that, Tom talks about. And, like in his book, he talks about, speak without offending, listen without defending. And there's two parts to it. So even though your message might not be offending the people. The person has to listen without being, defending. Because once they get into defensive mode, it's downhill from there.
I've learned to choose my words a little bit better to deliver the message without such a pierce arrow, but I certainly ain't walking around rubbing feathers on people either. But you're right, Phil. Existing people, like when we made the transition, I had a machinist that had worked for me 17 years or so, 18 years, and he played along real good, but he was real hard to get to change, and we had to have a couple sidebar, pretty direct, ugly, conversations. And I remember one of them, I said, Paul, I love you like a brother. You've been a great employee here, but this is not yesterday. I made the decision that this is the route we're going. This is the route we're going. And if it doesn't work for you anymore, I respect it. But I'm telling you right now, if you think it's going to be yesterday, tomorrow, it's not. And he got on the program.
James, can we go to your question now?
No.
Yeah, no, James, just maybe introduce yourself in your position as well, because you're a bit of a unique position.
Yep, no worries. So, Dave, I'm currently I guess you could call it a continuous improvement coach for BHP. So my role is to help the general manager and the site leadership team in a mine site to roll out lean across the mine site.
What's the company? What's the business?
BHP, Broken Hill Proprietary. It's a mining company. Yep.
You'd say it's one of Australia's, first or second largest mining company?
Largest. So there's 80,000 employees. Yeah, well, 80,000 employees.
Wow.
So I'm on a mine site with 2,500 employees. So I work with the general manager every day, every week, and his managers to adopt lean. So my role is I don't have any real authority. People obviously know that I report through the general manager, and I have frequent conversations with them, but ultimately they don't report to me. So every day I'll spend time and going out on the Gemba and going into all the different subsets of our value stream and teaching them about lean. One of the things that I've found hard in my journey is I want to be very candid with some people, but I find that once they shut the door on me, I've got no way back in. So my question is when you don't have authority over people, but they still need a candid conversation, how would you approach that?
Well, I have to ask a question first.
Yep.
Is this a union environment?
Yes.
Okay, well that's the biggest part of the problem right there. So that's a culture that just puts a wall between management. It's a two-part team. It's not a singular team, right? I worked at General Motors, so I got to deal with all that crap. So yeah, that's tough. You're in a tough position because if you don't have the authority, I don't even know if I have a good answer for that. I mean, I dealt with that at GM because I was an engineer during the week, and on the weekends I would do skilled trades supervision, and yet I had the authority to give these guys orders, but they could find a million ways not to take them. It was a constant court case. I don't honestly know how to answer that. I mean, I think you have to be candid and do it the best way you can, and just let the chips fall how they are. I mean, do you want to be their buddy or do you want to be their leader? And if you want to be their leader, you got to say what's right and what has to be said. If you want to be their buddy, nothing's going to get done. I'm not a sports guy, but I don't think the coach is generally the buddy with the players. He might be the buddy afterwards, but when it's game on, it's just like being in the army or in the military. You're in the trench fighting for your life. You're going to do what the commander says and not worry about him being your buddy or not, right?
Yeah, you confirm my approach is I feed the hungry. If they're not interested, then I don't spend time with them. I just spend the time with those that are interested. And when
that's for sure.
And when I've found through that approach, I can be more candid with those people. I think it was more of, just sort of seeing if I've missed anything, because I want to help everyone. I don't want to just leave, but I'm using the hungry people to build example areas, which is working.
Well, there's a statement when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and if the students aren't ready, you can beat them in the head with the books. They're never going to learn, right? So you don't even put any effort in those people. If they don't want to learn it, I mean, it does suck because you want a team of total participation, but if you're smashing your head against the wall, then it's not worth the effort, right?
Thanks, Dan. I 100% agree.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so Caleb has a question. Caleb couldn't be on here, but I'll ask it for him. So he's saying, and I'm guilty of this, he's saying a lot of people are wired for defense or blame shift when you just try and have a conversation. And this may link into what you were saying before, Dave, with comprehension as well. How do you train your people to listen when you're just trying to communicate and make things clear and not get their backs up?
Yeah, so that's a defense mechanism that people have, right? So when you start talking to them about something they did wrong and you're calling them out and they're embarrassed and their feelings are hurt, they start getting huffy and this, that, and because they're trying to deflect, they're trying to take that energy off of what they screwed up on or didn't do right or whatever. I think it just takes persistence. You have to not let the subject get deflected. You got to stay on it. Sometimes you might have to get tough in how you're talking to somebody, but you got to say, listen, do you understand that why we're here? And I want to help you get better, but this is what we need to do, and this is what I expect out of you. I think clarity is the first thing I would say in having that discussion. But and then sometimes if somebody's getting you got to tell them, check your attitude. Like we're not gonna do this. I mean, we're here as a team, and you got to reinforce that all ships in the harbor rise together. We need to improve, because if we don't, we're not going to be here. And our customers expect the best. And there's a competitor around the corner ready to eat our lunch. And those are the messages that I try to deliver. And if they're all true, I'm not bullshitting anybody. I speak with total transparency. I don't ever bullshit anybody. I tell it exactly how it is and how I feel.
Awesome, Dave. We've got a couple of questions from the chat here as well. So, Chris, did you want to go ahead and just ask that question?
Yeah, Dave, thanks for joining us today. That's awesome. I've got just a question around staff retention, I suppose, in when when we're doing a Candour culture and we can upset a couple of people here and there. How is staff retention? Do you find it's a bit of a turnover, or have you got the right people on the bus?
It's a turnover. I mean, I got 6 people now. The longest is Ryan. He's a little over 7 years. Matt is 2 years. Gilbert is a little over a year and a couple of months. Max is pretty new, 3 months. Scott, our graphics designer, is 3 months. So yeah, we have turnover. Do I want turnover? Absolutely not. Every time you have to retrain somebody, you're starting over. It totally sucks. That said, I'll take turnover over and over again until we get the right people, because we are focused on the right people. And if somebody's not right, that's okay. We're not going to alter our path because somebody wants to derail it. So, and some of the turnover is not even culture or lean based. We do a lot of the same parts over and over, but every one that comes to us is in a different condition. So, we're not putting, round pegs and round holes all day. That's a very, very repeatable process with little variation. We have massive variation. There's a lot of hand dexterity, a lot of detail. And some people just frankly, they can't do the work, or, I mean, they don't, it's not their natural. They don't excel at it naturally. I mean, maybe if you train them hard and hard for 10 years, they'll get it, but it's just finesseful stuff. And some people are just not cut out for it.
Okay. No worries. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the answer.
Okay. So Edwin's got a really good question now. Edwin, if you don't mind.
Dave, does your company have defined values? And if so, do you lean on them when giving candid feedback to keep the focus on the behavior rather than making it personal?
So great question. Up until this year, we did not have defined values, and we did create them this year. That was part of the New Year rollout. We don't go over them every day that we probably should. And to your second question, I don't know that we, go to the value list and pull it out and cite it in a discussion, but we cite it indirectly, because the values statement, bullet lines, if you will, came from everything we've been practicing. So even though we didn't have it on a list, if you will, we were doing them all anyway.
Yeah.
Leaving things better, treating people with respect, standing that, we're here for value creation. Our customers come to us for value. If we don't provide value, we're not going to be here. One thing that I'm really a big message that I'm big on driving home, and I did a video on this, is my employees don't work for me. I'm not a trust fund baby. I don't have bags of cash buried in my backyard, and this is a hobby. Every dollar that the company has is inputted from our customers.
Yeah.
So yes, I administrate it and I divvy it out and push it around and things like that. But we have 2 paid breaks a day and a half-hour paid lunch. We have 50 minutes a day out of an 8-hour day that's paid. I don't pay for that. Our customers pay for that.
Yeah.
Our vacation time is paid for by our customers. Every benefit that we enjoy, bidet toilet seats, music in the shop, air conditioning, all of that is paid for by our customers. And, we're very, very bold and outright about that, if you enjoy these things, you're going to want to protect them by serving the customer, because that's how we have them.
I've just found that if you have a value, and you can normally correct people because they need correction, like you said, feedback, immediate feedback, and to say, hey, look, what you've done there is not living to the value of, keeping it better than you found it, leaving it better than you found it, or the value
that's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
And so it doesn't become personal. It doesn't become like, oh, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're doing. And, it's like, no, you're not living that value. And you can actually measure that, quite easily. Say, well, you're not doing this. You're not living to it. Okay, well, then I don't think you fit this culture. You might go somewhere else where that they accept that. So I've got a quick question for you, Dave.
Yeah.
How you're just talking a lot about culture, and it's on the books. It's everywhere, How would you describe your culture currently?
Well, it's strong. I mean, so if I just look at, how are people aligned and are they harmonious with what we're trying to do? That's the main driver. We want harmony. I don't want to come in and argue with anybody that I work with. I want everybody to understand what we're doing and why. There is no arguments. There's no rolling of the eyes. We don't have people coming in tardy. So we start at 7:30 now. This is our standard. The standard is you arrive at the parking lot at 7:20, park your car, or whatever texting you got to do. You do that before you walk in the building. When you walk in, you clock in, you put your phone away, and you are in our break room at 7:25, because at 7:28, 3 minutes later, we have a tone that goes off and we all walk to do stretches. The reason for this standard is, if everyone bases their normal schedule to hit the parking lot at 7:20, in the event that there's a school bus that morning, or there's a little snow, or there's an accident that you didn't, plan on, you're not walking in the door at 7:29 and then all of a sudden you hit that school bus and now you're late, right? It's called being prepared, right? Responsible. So that's the standard. And then I also want people to socialize a little bit. I mean, everybody would show up in the break room in the morning and they're on their phones. Nobody's talking. Everybody's looking at the walls. They're on their phones. I said, no, that's it. No phones in the break room in the morning. You can have them at break. You can have them at lunch. But let's at least get 3 minutes in of being with each other to talk about non-work stuff. And we've been doing that for a while, and it's good. So I think our culture is really, really good. Can it be improved? Of course, because everything can be improved. Is it perfect? No. But it's really, really good, I think. I don't know if I think some of my guys were going to maybe join here. I don't know if Ryan's on and if he wants to interject about it, what he thinks. It's better to come from him than me.
That's true. It's a good point. But I think what you're saying is basically everybody's in the right seat and everybody's rowing at the right pace. So everybody's in harmony.
Yes. Yeah. There's
no conflict.
Probably the best it's ever been. We do have a very, very harmonious culture.
So Ryan, what's the culture like? Can you give us a bit of an insight there?
For me, the culture is paradise. I've always wanted to work at a place where you're respected and your ideas are valued. and you're valued, and you're constantly learning. So the culture is excellent. I mean, where else can you go and learn every day? And we call it SickeyRx University. We're constantly growing ourselves. And I guess a frustrating thing is for when people come through the door, and if they don't see how great it is, that's a little disappointing. But we've got a great team right now, and the culture is easy. We make everything easy to learn, easy to do the processes, and it gets better every day.
So
So,
knowing
you know,
what you
in the spirit of candor, I want Ryan to tell a story of what happened yesterday. Go ahead, Ryan. This came from Ryan, not me. Go ahead, tell the story.
The bathroom story.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Well, yeah. This is candor, and this is TMI, too much information. But we hold the standards everywhere in our workplace, whether it be the break room, the coffee space, or the bathroom. And we've had a challenge getting everybody to just respect the bathroom and take the time to leave it better than they found it, or just better. And I went to use the bathroom yesterday afternoon, and there, pardon my French, but there was shit on the toilet. And we have very nice toilets. We have very nice Toto bidet toilets, and it's disrespectful to the next person and to our what we have. So I called everybody on the walkie-talkie to the bathroom like I have before, pointed it out. And I was very, I just said, I'm tired of having the same meeting every day. So, we put the message out there, and, so far it's been okay for the last 24 hours.
Now I have to interject and say anyone else would see what we're critiquing, and it would be normal to them. I mean, our bathrooms, the standard that we hold our restrooms to is you could literally open your lunch and eat it on the rim of the toilet. So we actually do training on how to use the toilet. I keep my pants on when I do it, but I actually go through the motions and show. So when you sit your butt on the toilet, when you get up when you're done, we have Lysol wipes right above. The standard is you pull the wipe, you wipe the top of the seat, you lift the seat up, you wipe the bottom, you wipe the rim, you inspect for any splashes, and you leave that toilet the way you want to receive it. So we actually go through and do that. And so here's another case where we're not celebrating the wins, because 95% of the time it's perfect. But we don't want it perfect 95% of the time. We want it perfect 100% of the time. So we are going to keep calling it out. It's in Japan, shuhari, until our team delivers it 100%. They hit that standard. And Ryan is really good at, I've empowered him and anyone else to call out anybody at any time about the stuff. As long as, here's a caveat here, you can call out anybody as long as you're not doing it vindictively. You got to do it with a spirit of an open heart so that people learn and grow. If you're trying to jab people and stuff like that, we don't tolerate any of that.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, we are very respectful when we do this. It's not a belittling thing, but we're all human, and we just have to. If we push this under the rug, where will we be in 2 months with the bathroom? You have to hit these things right in the head, and take care of them right away.
Peter's got a question. Dave, do you do staff one-on-ones? And if so, how often?
Not formally. I know your dad's a checklist formal kind of guy. I don't do any of that formal shit. When there's a reason to have a discussion, we do it right then. So, that's another thing that's talked about in some of the leadership books or things about candor. Like, I don't believe in really yearly performance reviews. Because if somebody isn't doing their job right now, why do I want to wait another 11 months to tell them? Immediately, even daily. I mean, we course correct nonstop all the time.
Does anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask Dave before we log off?
Dave, my question is, you're in Harmony, you've got a great culture now, but I imagine when you first started, it may not have been that way. What's been your journey in terms of change the man or change the man. And specifically what I'm asking is, it's become evident to us we've got some members of our team that are on fire. They get it immediately. We don't have to push. They're just going for it. And then we've got the other extreme where people are going through the motions. Does it come back to what you said before, which is just have some candor and just ask the question, what's going on there? Like, do you believe in what we're doing? And have you had those people originally in your building, and what's happened to them?
So, yeah, we had a girl that worked in the shop for a while. In fact, we're still friends. I saw her Easter Sunday, actually. And I kind of think she wants to come back, but it's another story. She loved the company, she loved the work, and she loved the environment, but she hated having to make an improvement every day. Like, she hated it. It was like, it was a burden to her. It was always like on her shoulder. And I think she was the type that was looking for one instead of letting one come to her. What I would say is, I think Paul talks about this, the people that are struggling to get it, in one sense, if they just put up a barrier and they're going to fight you and they don't want to try, then maybe they just need to go away. But if they're just shy about it, or they have an anxiety or fear about it for some reason, probably working with them hardcore to get them to see it could be the solution. And I've done that with some people, to reasonable success levels. I think getting this in the heart, though, is something that people, they have to really love it, or they don't. Like, Ryan, it's totally in his heart. There's nothing to sell with him. He's on fire all the time. And I got other guys that are real good at it too, but he believes in it big time, and he loves it. It's a game to him. He's a very creative person, so it's just a natural thing for him. Some people are not, and I don't know that you'll get, you're never going to get everybody on the same level. You're always going to, and how many people you have in your company?
20.
Okay, yeah, so that's a good number, and it is tough. I think you have to decide what's we call it like level one. We have level 1, level 2, and level 3 team members. And to be able to walk in the door every day, you have to meet the requirements of level 1. And if you're not doing the bare minimum, and your attitude's terrible, well, you're just not going to be around, because we can't let the ship get dragged down. And then and talking about Jack Welsh again, you're not doing that person any service either if it's not their right home.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. I think it's like everything in a lean journey. As you evolve, things become clearer, or they kind of sort themselves out, because you start to get numbers around it. And then if people are feeling uncomfortable, well, then it's just not the right place for them anymore. I think that's
right.
Potentially.
So how long have you been doing lean?
We're 9 months in.
Oh, okay, so pretty early. Yeah.
We're very early, but we've had some. I keep saying we've stood on the shoulders of giants. So having content like what you're putting out there, you've helped us fast track the mistakes everyone made in the beginning. So from that perspective, we just followed the blueprint and it's worked well. But it's just becoming evident where we're strong and where we're weak, and trying to not push it down people's throats and just focus on the ones that are energized. It
is hard, as the leader, if you're really driven and you're passionate and you're focused. I think it's human nature that we want the people on our team to go at our speed, and they're not gonna. It's just you might get one or two here and there, and they're gonna just buy in that hard. But so I'm a very, very high strung guy, and I'm a high energy guy, and I like to get shit done, and that's something that I struggle with a little bit, is like, how come everybody's not, in love with this like me? Of course, they also don't work 70 hours a week and eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff like I do. It's a form of my icky guy. I just love it so much. The early times are the hardest, because there's a lot of uncertainty. The further in you get, the more your own certainty is going to be there, and you'll be questioning less of your decisions, because you'll know they're right decisions.
Dave, Ryan, this has been very motivational, and I'd encourage anyone on this chat, if you haven't seen any of Dave's videos, this guy operates at a level you wouldn't believe. These
It's very flattering.
No,
I think
it's
Dave's
true.
taken all the Gemba pipe in the USA.
Yeah.
I know I got to tell my buddy Trump to stop with the tariffs so I can still afford this shit.
That's right.
There's none of it's made. Now I'm going to call Trump up and say, get Gemba pipe made in the USA.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Dave and Riot. We'll leave it there. And we really appreciate you taking the time out to be on with us. It's almost 10 o'clock at night for you. So thank you very much.
All right. Appreciate you guys having us.
I think I first heard about Paul when I was, it would have been 2012.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if you heard, he did a talk on like the 1-3-30.
Yeah, I did.
I think I'm the 30.
Oh, okay.
It took me a long time to really conceptualize because I was young. I didn't understand manufacturing. I didn't understand.
I think well, at least for me to get on board with this, you got to go through a bunch of pain, and you gotta have everybody's got a reason. It's probably not the same, but there's gotta be something that causes you to seek out a better way, and that's what it was for me. So I did it wrong for 22 years and saw a path forward on how to do it right.
Yeah, and then you went from there.
I think we all make mistakes like that. That's the road, right? It's to and then just pick up and go. And the whole purpose of this learning club is to help people shortcut and not have to make that mistake. But a lot of people, it's interesting, they'll hear things, but they don't act on it. And then so nothing really happens until the rubber hits the road, like they have to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a two-part scenario. One, there's a lot of, in our current world, there's a lot of talkers and not doers. But the second element is and we could go off on hours about this, I think we have a fundamental comprehension problem in our world. You give somebody an instruction and they say yep, and then 2 minutes later they do something different. And people their minds are just not present enough in what's going on. They're elsewhere, they're on their phone, all this shit, and they just I see it as a big problem.
So many distractions, right? For nowadays, it's like attention deficit disorder. Like, where do you put your attention to? Because there's so many things coming to you.